Today, we're going to take a deep look at the new D&D Starter Set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. I'm going to talk about the new Sly Flourish Bookstore, which is now open for business. We're going to talk about DM David's excellent article where he broke out monsters by function. And we're going to cover the remainder of the questions for July 2022 from the Sly Flourish patrons. All today on the Lazy D&D Talk Show. I'm your pal, Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here to talk about all things D&D. This show, like all of the work of Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. If you want to help me put on shows like this and want to get access to all kinds of exclusive material, exclusive source books like the City of Arches, exclusive adventures, access to a dedicated Discord channel, and a whole lot more, you can do so by becoming a patron of Sly Flourish. The link is in the show notes below. I don't know how it happened, but I know I have a wonderful wife, and my wonderful wife pre-ordered the new D&D starter set from Target the minute we found out it was available. And it showed up a couple days early. I don't know why I was so lucky. A bunch of people are like, oh, you have secret insider stuff with Wizards of the Coast. I'm like, no, it was random luck. But in that random luck, I got a copy of the new D&D starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about what's in it. So Dragon of Stormwreck Isle is a starter set. I believe it is the replacement for the Lost Mines of Phandelver starter set, which has been around for, I think, 7 or 8 years, right? It came out very quickly after the initial 5e release. So this is the first time that a new starter set has come out. But it's very easy to get this confused with the D&D Essentials kit, another box set. So there are sort of 3 different D&D box sets now, 2 starter sets and an Essentials kit. This one comes with the same stuff that the Lost Mine of Phandelver box set came with, which is essentially 4 things: a 32-page rule book, a 48-page adventure book, a bunch of pre-generated characters, and a small set of dice. The set of dice is only 6 dice. It does not have a percentile die. It does not have an extra d20. Really, when you compare this to the D&D Essentials kit is where things kind of hurt. Because if you go to Target and you look for the D&D starter set, you can see right here, $19.99 D&D Dragons of Stormwreck Isle starter set. Really, very cool. Right? And you can order it. You can order it today. If you do D&D Essentials kit, same store, you get the D&D Essentials kit, which is $18.99, $1 less. Now, granted, it's on sale. The MSRP for the starter set is $19.99. The MSRP for the Essentials kit is $24.99, but it's on sale all the time. The Essentials kit is on sale. It's on sale. I didn't think it's considered, I guess it's considered on sale right now, but that's pretty much the flat rate. And oh my God, you get so much more stuff with the Essentials kit. So that kind of hurts up front, is that when you open it up, it feels light. It feels like it doesn't have all the same stuff, particularly because it costs $1 more than the Essentials kit costs. As a starter set, this is a far better way to get started playing D&D. For DMs and players who have never played before, this is probably the way to go. At this point, given that it's a full MSRP $19.99, I don't think I could recommend it over the Essentials kit, even for new DMs. I would say for a new DM, pick up the Essentials kit. You get more dice, you get a DM screen, you get status cards, you get treasure cards, you get character generation. You can make your own characters with the Essentials kit. You get a lot more stuff. There's a map. There's like a fold-out map with the Essentials kit. You get a lot more stuff than you get in this for less money. But when this comes down in price, and it certainly will, once it's available on Amazon, once it's once it's discounted, and this is like $9 to $12. I've seen the starter set for as low as $9. This is going to be a really good deal. One very surprising thing is that there is no connection at all in the box to D&D Beyond. And at first my thought was, well, that kind of makes sense because the whole merger between D&D Beyond and Wizards of the Coast didn't happen when this was getting put together. Except, again, the Essentials kit has a card on the inside where you can get a free copy of the Essentials kit adventure, Dragon of Icespire Peak, and D&D Beyond, and you get a discount for the player's handbook inside the same book. I don't know why they couldn't have done the same thing with this. And so not having any D&D Beyond connection actually kind of hurts. There's one bit of marketing in here where it kind of shows all the social media connections for D&D. It shows like other things you can buy, including the Essentials kit, right? Continue it with the Essentials kit up in the corner. And there's like a QR code, right? It describes a link. It says, visit dnd.wizards.com/starter to find the additional. No QR code up here. Then there's a QR code. After you play, tell us what you think. And a great big QR code on the bottom. There's only 2 QR codes in this whole box. And one of them is to a survey, which doesn't help you play D&D at all. The survey is very useful for Wizards of the Coast to make products. It is not useful for a brand new player who's trying to learn how to play D&D. I would have put a great big QR code for the starter set. In the rule book and the 32-page rule book in the beginning is a QR code. And when you click that one does go to the Wizards of the Coast. When you hit the QR code in this book, it takes you to this page, which is a page anybody can get to right now. And it's got videos for how to play. It's got thoughts about how to role play, and certainly they can fill this page out. But otherwise, it's a pretty vanilla page for D&D, including having like a page that leads you to the very book you just bought. I don't really need more marketing for the book I already bought. You know what I'd like? A D&D Beyond connection. I'd like a PDF of the character sheet so I can print out a new copy. And I presume like it's early. It just came out. They might put this stuff on there. Wizards of the Coast, if you're listening, I would seriously, at the very least, put up a PDF so that I can print new copies of these character sheets so that when I use these up, I have a way to get more. That would be very nice. It's really hard not to compare this to the D&D Essentials kit. Again, it's $1 more. So not only with the D&D Essentials kit do you get an adventure that's actually a bigger adventure, but it also gives you access to 3 additional adventures that can take you up to 12th level from D&D Beyond. So when that one box set that you pick up for $18.99 comes with all that stuff, more dice, DM screen, all that stuff, it also gives you access to a 1st to 12th level campaign. That's as big as a Wizards hardcover book. It's a ton of material. No expansion like this. The adventure in here, it is a 48-page adventure rulebook. So it's as big as the ones that you would find with Dragon of Icespire Peak or Lost Mine of Phandelver, which I believe both are also 48 pages. But it's a shorter adventure. It has 4 chapters. One chapter where you're sort of introduced to D&D and introduced to a quest hub. And then 3 sort of side adventures, two adventures, 2 paths, 2 chapters that you can do in either order. You're expected to do both of them, but you can do them in whatever order you want. That's kind of a neat idea. And then a final chapter where you sort of get to the end of the conclusion of the adventure. And it takes you through 3rd level. So by the end of this book, you will be 4th level. In comparison, you get to up to 6th level in the adventure for the D&D Essentials kit. The one thing that this adventure does very, very well, better than either Dragon of Icespire Peak or Lost Mine of Phandelver, is it really walks through a new DM on how to play. And that's why I'm not complaining about the size of the adventure in this book. I think that it is the right size for a starter adventure. This is not something that an experienced DM that you should go run right out and buy because you're definitely going to want to run this adventure for your group. I think as an experienced DM, it'll be a lot of fun to run this adventure, but it's a relatively short adventure. And there's a lot of text spent on like how to do skill checks and how to understand how to do role playing and things like that. There's lots of different descriptive text, which Phandelver didn't have and Icespire Peak didn't have, that can really walk a DM through having how to play D&D, which is very, very important. And this book does it better than everybody. The other thing that this book does, which I think is fantastic and very well needed, is it doesn't kill 1st level characters. You will spend a lot of time at 1st level in this adventure. You will go through the whole introduction part, which is basically like a quick combat in the beginning. Maybe it's an optional quick combat in the beginning and then going to the quest hub. And then you'll do the next leg of your adventure, the next one of those 2 chapters. Both of those are designed for 1st level as well, which means you're going to do basically 6 to 8 hours of content at 1st level before you get to 2nd level. That might seem like it's taking a long time, but if, again, you're playing with brand new players, it might take that much time to really understand what's going on. I think that was a good design decision. The other thing is it has a built-in fail-safe against TPKs. If you are all wiped out, the main NPC rescues you. And it's a little ham-fisted. It's like you show back up in the temple and she's like, hey, sorry, it looked like you had trouble down there with those fungi. But you're awake and you're not dead. And the book specifically talks about not killing the characters at 1st level. That's way better than Phandelver, where everybody got killed by the goblins in the first battle, or certainly got killed by the bugbear and the wolves in the other cave. And Dragon of Icespire Peak, where it's like you're facing ochre jellies that can hit you for 14 points of damage. Or you face a manticore that can like hit you for like 20 points of damage at 1st level. This one knows how to treat 1st level characters. It is way better than both of those in the idea that it will not wipe out 1st level characters. I think that's really important. I still give a lot of crap to the starter set and the essentials kit for putting really hard, high CR monsters against low level characters. Because I'm like, what are you trying to filter people out? You're trying to make sure Wizards of the Coast doesn't have too many customers. You're going to have people get killed because they don't know what they're doing. DMs don't understand that these monsters are too hard. Why are you wiping everybody out? This one doesn't wipe them out. It's got not only are the monsters reasonable for 1st level characters, I think there's like a couple of encounters where you're like, oh, that'd be really tough. But it does some Witchlight kind of things where it has non-combat options for a lot of the battles in here. Lots of ways to talk to people, lots of ways. I think the final boss you're pretty much fighting, but definitely I think, handles low-level characters way better than either the original Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set or Dragon of Icespire Peak from the D&D Essentials kit. So for starting DMs, I think this is just plain better. It's just plain better. So here's some pictures of the actual set. I bought, or my wife ordered 2 copies of it. So I have 2, one that I'm going to keep sealed away in a vault and the other one I'm going to screw around with. This is everything it comes with: the character sheets, the bit of marketing, and the 2 books, right? Very lightweight. This book, by the way, one thing, it does not have character creation guidelines. It expects that you're using the pre-gen characters, which again, I think is a fine way to go with a starter set. But again, if you are interested in one that actually lets you build characters, the D&D Essentials kit is a good way to go. These are the 2 books: 32-page starter book, bigger adventure book. All the maps in here are done by Mike Sly. Mike Sly has done all the maps for Phandelver, and he did a lot of maps for other D&D products. They're beautiful maps, beautiful full color maps. Really nice artwork. Now, one of the things you'll notice about the artwork is that it includes the characters from the D&D cartoon. So it has this kind of fun tie to the cartoon. That is the only connection in this book to the cartoon. People are like, oh, are the characters also from the cartoon? They are not. Is any of the story involve the characters from the cartoon? It does not. It's just some of the artwork includes characters that look like they came from the cartoon. 4 chapters: Dragon's Rest, where you go meet an important NPC; the Seagrow Caves, where you deal with some sentient fungi; the Cursed Shipwreck, where you get to go explore an old shipwreck that's out on the coast; and the final chapter, the Clifftop Observatory. This one has both Dungeons and Dragons available for your Dungeons and Dragons players to enjoy. It also has a page of optional encounters that you can drop in different places. So, and it has good description about, hey, here's how you can drop these in. You'll notice that one of them includes, in fact, an owlbear. Owlbears are pretty rough, so you probably want to deal with the owlbear, but it talks about like the owlbear. You won't necessarily just go and get killed by an owlbear. That you could actually deal with it in ways that are not pure combat. It has a page of magic items which you pick up, and then a little monster guide, a bunch of different monsters in here. One thing that I think is sort of an unsung feature of Lost Mine of Phandelver: the monster selection in Lost Mine of Phandelver and the location selection in Lost Mine of Phandelver were universal enough that you could reskin Lost Mines of Phandelver and run adventures from 1st to 5th level hundreds of times in different varying degrees. If you look at the locations in Lost Mine of Phandelver, it's got crypts, it's got underground cellars, it's got caves, it's got ruined castles, it's got ruined towns, it's got all these different locations, very reskinnable into different places. I don't think this one is quite as reskinnable or as reflavorable. You're not going to reuse these locations time and time again like you could with Phandelver. I don't know how many people were doing that with Phandelver anyway, though. I don't know that that's a big loss. So there was a big question about whether or not you're going to see any new design changes in this. Is this going to be an introduction to D&D 5.5? As far as I could tell, there are no major design differences between this version of the game and anything we've seen with 5th edition. When I skimmed through the rule book, all the rules I saw were the standard fare. There's a couple of interesting changes with characters, but nothing notable. An example is the Paladin's detect evil sort of aura is whenever he wants to use it. I don't even know that that's a change in the rules or how it's going to change in the new edition or anything like that. I think they just might have done that to save space. A lot of the character rules are on those pre-gen character sheets. They're not in the rule book. So I think in some cases they abbreviated things just to make it a little easier to get started with play. But I didn't see no new Tasha style changes. The rogue doesn't have aim, for example. There's a lot of different things that basically all of the rules are your standard D&D fare. The box, this is another little complaint I have. The box at the top says for 2 to 5 players. They're not including the GM in that 2 to 5 players. It is 2 to 5 players and a dungeon master. I had hoped that like the D&D Essentials kit is built for one-on-one play. You can have one player and one DM get together and play that game. I had hoped this one would do the same thing. It didn't. It does describe that you can have 2 players in a DM and both of the players will use 2 characters. It's intended for 4 to 5 characters. It's a pretty limited scope of how many people can play, because you can always double somebody up. You can play with 2, 3, 4, 5 players, but you can't play with just one player unless you're running all of them. You certainly could. And somebody could just do one-on-one D&D with a player who is playing 2 characters and just scope everything down. We've talked all this time on the show about reduce the number of monsters, lower the amount of hit points the monsters have, lower the damage they do, reduce their number of attacks. There's lots of ways to get this to be playable with just one player and one DM. It would have been nice if it offered more rules for how to do that, to make this book even more accessible, to make the starter set more accessible for somebody that's like, look, it's just me and my friend, and we want to learn how to play D&D. So that would have been something that's nice. That's not there, unfortunately. You could do it, and maybe I'll put out a guide, like how to run this with one-on-one. I think would actually be something very valuable. It uses story-based advancement. It does not use experience-based advancement. You start at first level. You go through the beginning, talk to your quest NPC, learn about the quest, go through the first quest, and at the end of that, you get to second level. Then you do the other quest, you get to the third level, and then you go to the final chapter. You can do either of the two middle chapters. Chapter 2 and 3, you can do in either order, and both are designed to be done at first level and has some design descriptions about how to increase the difficulty for second level. Both of them do that very well. Look, it was very well done. So right now, it is only available in Target in the US. This is an exclusive thing that Wizards of the Coast has with Target. They did the same thing with Lost Mine of Phandelver. They did the same thing with the D&D Essentials Kit. A lot of people were kind of upset with the limited release scope. They're upset until it comes out in general release, and then nobody ever thinks about it again. So I would not worry about it. The other thing is, if you are a experienced dungeon master, if you are somebody who's into this hobby, like many of us are, if you're into the hobby as much as I am, you're really not missing that much. It's not a big deal. Right? It is a really good starter set for a brand new DM. For experienced DMs, it's not really bringing anything other than a nice short adventure. I'm certainly not upset with the fact that I bought it, and I certainly am excited to run it. Does this have anything new? Like the Essentials Kit had new stuff. The Essentials Kit had like new one-on-one rules. The adventure had a lot going on. It was a long adventure that could take you to 6th level. It had all the access to all the stuff on D&D Beyond, including adventures that could take you up to 4th. So that was really a big deal. For this one, for an experienced DM, it's really not offering that much. So you should not feel like you're missing out with the fact that you can only get it at Target in the US. I would not worry about it. In fact, I don't know that I would buy it if I was an experienced DM. Unless you're really excited to, go ahead and do it. I'm excited to. But like $20 is $20. It's going to be $12 in a few months, and you can get it anywhere. So I would not worry too much about it. I think it excels at the thing it's meant to excel at. I think it's very good at being a good, strong starter set for a new Dungeon Master, a new GM, for people that are just getting into D&D. Once this hits the $9 to $12, once it's available on stores in the world, I think it's an easy recommendation. I think for a brand new player, it's an easy recommendation. I do not think this is something that every DM needs to have. I really don't. I think that Phandelver was a big, thick, meaty adventure with a lot of story going on, a lot of plot going on. Dragon of Icespire Peak, another great big adventure with dozens and dozens of quests that you could go on, lots of things, lots of access to continue it on to 12th level. Those were great big sort of D&D campaigns. This one is a short one. It is an introduction to D&D. It really is a starter set. You'll probably get somewhere between like 8 and 16 hours of gameplay out of this. You're not going to get these great big sessions like you could get out of Phandelver. It would take with a lot of players playing pretty slow to take 16 full hours. I think you could get through a lot of this pretty quickly. So you're not really missing that much. At $20, again, 19. If you don't have the Essentials Kit, I would definitely get the Essentials Kit before I would get this. Even as a new DM, I'd probably get the Essentials Kit because you just get so much more stuff for $1 less. Once this is down to a reasonable price, once you can get it for, on that area between $9 and $12. Again, I've seen the Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set for, I think, as low as like $8 in some cases. In some sales, you can get it for $8. For $8, it's crazy. For $20, it's not a terrible deal. If somebody's just getting started and they spent $20 on this, it's not a big waste. I'm not saying that $20 is really expensive for this. I'm saying if you had $20, the D&D Essentials Kit gives you almost twice as much stuff, more than twice as much stuff for the same $20. That's really my big statement. But I think this is a fantastic way to get started with D&D. I really like it. And you can find, I'll link to places where you can buy it in the show notes below. That is my thoughts on the D&D starter sets. Friends, the Sly Flourish Bookstore is now open for business. It's actually been up and running now for a couple of months. I think I've had it about 3 months open, but so far it's only been digital products. And now the Sly Flourish store has physical products as well. You can go to Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. In format, you can select PDF, EPUB, and hardcover, and you can order your own copy and have it sent directly to your door from the Sly Flourish Bookstore. The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, and the Lazy DM's Companion all have physical versions available. You can go and you can order them. They all come with the PDF version. So if you order the physical version, you automatically get the PDF and EPUB, or PDF and, if available, an EPUB version, and map packs all in one package directly from the store. Currently, we are only delivering books to the United States, Canada, the UK, and Germany. I am working on getting distribution to Australia. We were able to ship the Kickstarter to countries all over the world, but shipping individual products is very different from doing one big mass drop ship. And I haven't figured out all of the different issues with VAT and shipping and where to warehouse stuff so that it's in the right place at the right time. I'm in the process of figuring that all out, but in the meantime, it is available only currently in those 4 countries. Maybe if you're seeing this later, you can always check and see if it's available in your country. I'm hoping to add in Australia and other countries in the EU you pretty soon. You can also get access to all of the PDFs of all of these products as well, including all of my 4 other books, Fantastic Lairs, Ruins of the Grendel Root, Fantastic Adventures, and Fantastic Locations. All of these books have extensive previews. So you come to the store, you're not sure you're into my stuff. You're like, hey, I watched this video. I don't really know if I like what he's doing though. You can check out free samples. I do big free samples of stuff. You can go to Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master. You can say, check out the Lazy DM preview PDF. Great big PDF, 11-page PDF that covers the main bulk of the way of the Lazy Dungeon Master. Talks about the 8 steps, describes the 8 steps, gives you a lot of material. Every one of my books, I give out big previews of stuff. You want to see what the Lazy DM's Companion is like? We have a 17-page free sample of the Lazy DM's Companion. This is the book that I wrote last year. It's been just delivered now. Lots of stuff here that you can use right away, even from the free sample. All my samples are usable. You can grab it. You can use it at your game today. You like it, go buy the book. That's the intent. Fantastic Lairs, the book that I worked on with Scott Fitzgerald Gray and James Indercasso. You can pick that up. Again, 2 free sample lairs available, 17-page preview, 2 lairs that you can use at your game right now. Same thing for every one of these books, all has free samples. Ruins of the Grendel Root has free first level adventure. You want to play a first level adventure? Here you go. Good starter adventure. Talks about the city, talks about everything you get in the book. Nice maps, good artwork, everything that you need to run it. I also have on here a free player character pack. This is a 70-page, 69-page character portfolio. This includes pre-gen characters for every one of the characters. It's designed to be printed front and back in a big packet. It has characters for all of the classes in 5th edition, designed so that you can level them all the way up to 5th level directly on the sheet. You can take them from 1st to 5th level directly on the sheet. And it includes spell descriptions. So the spells that you pick up, you don't have to have another book. You don't have to have a player's handbook. You have a new player that's coming. They want to play a bard. Given this sheet, they have everything they need in order to play a bard, including all the spell descriptions. All of that is here. That's free. Everybody can have it. Go get it. Go get it right now. Use it. I want you to use it. I want you to enjoy it. We have all that stuff. All of that is available right here in the Sly Flourish Bookstore. I hope you check it out. If you do, and you want to help me out, pick up a book. My friend, David Hartledge, who goes by DM David, wrote a really, really good article. The kind of article you're like, man, I wish I wrote that. Every so often, a lot of times at DM David, I see an article, I'm like, boy, I wish I wrote that. Really good idea. So there's always been a thought about roles, monster roles. This is something that 4th edition had codified into the rules. You had soldiers and brutes and artillery and controllers, and you knew like which monster did what kind of thing. What David did is he wrote out a list of the different types of monsters. His list comes from the Monster Manual and Monsters of the Multiverse, and he broke them down into agents, creatures that deliver messages for people, ambushers, ones that will surprise you, bodyguards, protectors of others, collectors of secrets and lore, different creatures that kind of grab things, commanders, ones that will command other groups, controllers, ones that sort of control the environment, enforcers, not exactly sure what the difference is, like an enforcer and a bodyguard, but enforcers, monsters that'll go and hit you really hard, friends, guides, and patrons, things that might be friendly to the characters, guards, lots of guards, things that would guard a location, haunts and corruptions, impersonators, masterminds and arch villains, mounts, protectors of nature, soldiers, spies and assassins, support soldiers, stalkers, story creatures, subterranean threats, undying threats, urban threats, wandering or hunting threats, wild threats, creatures that cause cataclysms, I love that one, tricksters and troublemakers. This is a fantastic way to think about the role that monsters play, not even just in combat. One of my arguments with 4th edition is it was a little bit paint by numbers. And it was like, oh, I should have a controller plus some brutes or controllers plus some soldiers and everything like that. And it built these sort of like cookie cutter battles, which some people really like. They were happy having that. I used it for a long time when I was doing 4th edition. But I also think like I want sort of more organic. I want monsters that make sense from a story perspective. What I love about what David did here is this is not all about combat. This is about the role that a character or that a monster plays in a game. And it's not just combat. Agents and ambushers, protectors. These are roles that they would fulfill in the story. I think it's really fantastic. This is a great article. This is the kind of thing you want to bookmark. You probably want to print it out, format it for a paper, stick it in your monster manual, keep a copy of this because it's a really, really handy way to look at monsters. I hope Wizards of the Coast took note of this because I think having a role like this added to monsters would be a really big improvement. Again, from a story perspective, not just like how it plays in battle, but how it actually functions in the game. David, thank you for doing that. It is awesome. Last week, I did a review, a kind of a very top-level spotlight of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel adventure book that Wizards of the Coast just put out. And I really love this book. I saw a review on ENWorld that goes into much more depth over this book than I did. And so my thought was, if you really want to read a deeper review that really gets into the book where somebody took a lot more care diving into it, I would highly recommend taking a look at this. It describes every one of the adventures that's in there and what's going on. Lots of pictures of art. It's a really, really excellent review. I just wanted to mention it because I had done the spotlight last week and I thought this does more service to reviewing the book and giving you an impression of what you're going to get than what I did in that spotlight. So take a look at that. Now we're going to go through the remainder of the questions for the Sly Flourish Patreon Q&A for July. Philip J says, banning has come up in chat in your streams from time to time. What things would you ban and why? What goes into the decision as a DM that really tells you I need to ban this or else to improve X? How have these sort of broken insert spell, item, or build broken your games as examples? I'm actually going to combine this with the next question. In the process of watching your most recent talk show, you struck on the idea that maybe it's time for DMs to start limiting race, subclass, and even spell choices. How might you approach a situation where you decide to choose a focused group of races in one geographic region that a campaign either focuses on exclusively or predominantly? I don't think of it as banning. First of all, I would expect most DMs either are banning something or would ban things depending on what their players brought to the table. I seriously doubt every DM is like, sure, you read some interesting subclass idea that somebody posted on Reddit. Go ahead and bring it to my table. I kind of doubt DMs would want that. Every D&D wiki subclass that anybody has ever designed, you're allowing at your game. I kind of doubt it. And if you're limiting it, most of the time when I hear ban, what I expect people say are, you're cutting things out that Wizards of the Coast has published. When people talk about banning, what they're saying is, hey, I have this thing in D&D Beyond and you're not letting me use it in D&D Beyond, which really means you're limiting things to just what Wizards of the Coast produces. But that limits all of the third-party stuff that is really good. And my recommendation, what I'm trying now in particular, and what I would recommend is, allow certain things. Allow things that fit the theme of the adventure. So then that gets into to Lyle's question of limiting races and stuff like that. I think there's probably two reasons we would limit content in our game. The first reason is when it doesn't fit the story of the game we're trying to tell. I think there are certain subclasses, there are certain races that make sense, particularly for a certain theme of a campaign, and then certain ones that don't. I think it's certainly within a DM's prerogative to say, these are a list of races that make sense for this game world. These are a list of subclasses that make sense. The example is I'm going to be running Empire of the Ghouls for my Wednesday game. We're going to have our session 0 next week. And I said, the player's handbook is allowed, the Midgard Heroes book is allowed, and Tome of Heroes is allowed. So those are 2 Kobold Press books and the player's handbook, which is as much material as Xanathar's and Tasha's also includes. But people would say, like, why aren't you including Tasha's and Xanathar's? And part of my reason is I want to try this other stuff. I want to help my players try this other stuff. Now, it's a little weird because that stuff isn't in D&D Beyond, so we have to make that choice about how we're going to do stuff that's not in D&D Beyond. But most of the time I expect I'm not banning things. I'm limiting the source content because there's so much material in the world. I've got to limit it somehow, right? If you're going to play Drakkenheim, just use the Drakkenheim player's book and the player's handbook, right? Makes sense. Now, there's another reason, other than thematic, other than selecting a set that kind of fits the theme of the campaign I want to tell. There's also what kind of stuff disrupts the game. We might think that like, oh, I want the game to play a certain way and this sort of thing hurts the game. It's actually when it removes uncertainty that I really get bothered. But in particular, things that disrupt the game. And the big example I'll use is the Conjure Woodland Beings, right? The giving one character the ability to summon 8 wolves, and then on their turn, they have to control 8 wolves, move them around, set their position, have them attack. Some have pack tactics, some don't. Some are knocking somebody down, some aren't. They're all over the place. Why would you give any player 9 turns? Right? Like, what a way to slow a game down. So in that case, the new spell from Tasha's is way better than the spell that's in the player's handbook. So that's one where I'm like, use the Tasha spell instead. I don't really have it as like a standing house rule, but if a player starts to take it, I'll say, hey, can you switch to that other one? We only have 1 monster instead of 9 or 8, because that's ridiculous. So when I see something that disrupts the game, I pick on Twilight Cleric a lot. And the reason I pick on Twilight Cleric is because I ran with Twilight Cleric. And as a DM, for challenging battles, I had to change the nature of the battle completely to deal with the fact that the characters are getting essentially healed. Everybody was getting essentially healed for like 8 to 12 hit points every round, automatically. It also disrupted the game because you had to choose to do it at the beginning of every character's turn as another action that isn't called out. It's not a free action. It's not a reaction. It's this like unspoken action where at the beginning of their turn, we always had to remind them, hey, make sure to take your temporary hit points. Hey, make sure to take your temporary hit points. Hey, every turn. It was bananas. It took long time. It was hard. Even the player who I was working on was like, yeah, this is pretty outrageous. When I see stuff that disrupts the flow of the game, that's something where I'm going to take a hard look at it. But a lot of times I try to like let it run for a while and see how it goes. And then I have an adult conversation. So those are really the reasons why I decide if something is, if I'm going to limit stuff or not. And again, like every book you read says the DM has prerogative on what to include and what not to. If you read the beginning of Tasha's and the beginning of Xanathar's, and none of it says this is now core rules and DMs have to use it. And if you don't, you're a dick. They don't say that. They say you get the choice. And I'm making that choice. The two reasons why I would limit content. One is I limit it for a creative reason, which is to kind of steer a campaign towards a certain feel and have characters that fit the theme of that campaign, thus limiting either races or subclass options and stuff like that. The other reason would be, are there things that disrupt the game? Are there components, are there new things in here that are disrupting the game, that are making it harder for me to run the game? Because let's be honest, I want my life to be easy, and put stuff in that's hard for me, that's bad. Any of the things that like make the DM change the path or the control of the game, anything where it's like, oh, now that monster can't do this thing that it would normally do, it has to do this other thing. That's disruptive. And I'm a little worried that I'm seeing more of that stuff in Tasha's, and I hope not to see as much in 5.5. Players love it. Until they don't. They love it until the point where the DM is like, okay, this is boring. I'm just going to run the same battle every time because I don't want to go through all this work. And all you do is polymorph into a giant ape every battle. So yeah, you win, right? Like they don't want to play that. Things that are disruptive to the game, that disrupt the flow of the game, things that remove uncertainty. Like if, we do this 3-thing combo that automatically wipes out any single creature. Guess what? Nobody likes that. The players aren't going to like it if they just do the same thing every time, right? Those are some things where I might go, okay, we're going to change the rules on that. Zeke says, my party loves dragging unsuspecting NPCs along with them on adventures. So I was wondering if you have any lazy DM tips for running NPCs that join a normal sized party. Yes, don't. Try to get them in and out as fast as you can. There's a few things you can do. One is make them non-combatants. Give them some reason why they won't fight in combat, because you don't want to have some NPC that's always battling. If you do, let one of the players handle them. Give an abbreviated stat sheet to that player to handle them. The adventure that's notorious for this is Tomb of Annihilation. Out of the Abyss is also pretty bad, where they give you lots and lots of NPCs. And in Tomb of Annihilation, sometimes they are way better than the characters are. That's terrible, right? Don't do that. The kind of NPCs that I love as tagalongs are intelligent magic items. Intelligent magic items are just as interesting from a character perspective, only the player gets to use the intelligent magic item to hit monsters. The main reason I don't like tagalong NPCs is that they take up the spotlight off the character. Get them in, get them out, make them non-combatants, and use intelligent magic items instead. Walt W., do you have a sweet spot for how many unique types of monsters you like to run in a single encounter? Yes, no more than 3 different types. D&D Beyond with the D&D Encounter Builder can theoretically let you run more than that pretty well. So you can, if you have an encounter builder that has the stat blocks, where you just click it and open it, it has the hit points tracked, but generally 3 is probably as many as you want to do. And I would not be opposed to having just 1. Here's a trick. You can reflavor the monsters. So you could have 4 veterans attacking the characters, but one's a dwarf, one's an elf, one's a half orc, and one's a human, right? And give them all sorts of different characteristics and use the same stat block. You could even just say, yeah, that longsword, it's actually an axe attack, right? Or he's attacking with 2 axes in his hands. Change the flavor, but use the same stat block. It's a really easy trick to make it look like they're fighting a wide variety of different monsters, but really they're all just fighting the same one. So that is a way, but generally I would not have more than 3 different stat blocks unless you have a tool like the Encounter Builder from D&D Beyond, which is a really good tool that lets you run multiple monsters and it's not any harder. Siren L says, what do you do when your characters catch on too quickly to a film homage inspired encounter that was supposed to be surprising? I bet you they're not going to get it. I bet you if you change it just slightly enough, it's not likely that they're going to realize that you took the House of Blue Leaves scene from Kill Bill. Or you took, I think in your case, in your full post, you had mentioned that you wanted to have the characters go into a vampire bar, just like in From Dusk Till Dawn. I bet you they're not going to pick up on it. Most of the time, we think that our thing is obvious. There's actually good scientific research about this. The thing that we think is obvious to other people is not obvious to them. So generally, I wouldn't worry about it. If they do, just roll with it. Just be like, yep, kind of like that, right? Don't worry about it too much. Life's hard enough, right? And the idea that you have to change things to make sure they don't pick it up, they're probably not going to pick it up. They're probably not going to get it. If you want to do it, just change and reskin a few things. Is it vampires? What if it's sentient ghouls, right? What if there's some other angle? What if it's actually spectral people? Like, change it just slightly and it will be enough. It'll be far enough away. Same with an NPC. If you pulled an NPC from popular fiction and you're like, it's just like, Thomas Shelby from Peaky Blinders. Just make it a woman. Switch the gender, right? Switch the gender of it, and nobody will ever realize that you're using the same character. Knights of Roleplay says, I've started writing my first homebrew campaign setting. Since I started writing, I found more than one of my ideas that I thought were original actually appeared in numerous existing campaign source books. I don't want to be accused of being unoriginal or stealing. Should I discard my ideas, maybe rename them, or should I just not worry about it? It depends you're saying a homebrew campaign setting. If this is really a homebrew setting, if you're just using this for the home game, you should feel free to steal all the time. Like, just steal directly. You don't have to reflavor anything. You should never feel like your idea, you just saw me, if you watch my Numenera show, I just grabbed a city that was right in one of the books. I'm plopping it right in my city, barely changing anything at all. That's what it's for. I can tell you, as a designer who makes this kind of stuff, I want you to steal as much or as little as you want. If you want the whole thing to plop in, just go. If you want to just grab pieces, just go. Use your creativity where you want to use it. Don't worry about using it to not plagiarize, especially if you're on the assumption that you're doing a homebrew campaign. It's not plagiarism if you're not publishing it. If you're making a published campaign setting, you have to be a lot more careful. You want to be original just from a marketing perspective. You want something that they can't buy elsewhere. But also, obviously plagiarism for publishing is really bad. So obviously don't do that. But for a home game, man, do not worry about it. Take whatever you want. Take it as it is, modify it however you want and use it. Almost every designer, I think pretty much every designer I've ever talked to about this topic has said that's what they want. Wolfgang Bauer, who made Midgard, I asked them this question. I said, what is your number one goal for Midgard? And he said, my goal is for DMs to take it and shred it and use the parts that they want to use in their campaigns however they want to use it. It's Wolfgang Bauer. He's been working in D&D for like 30 years. That's where to go. So do not worry. You will not be accused of being unoriginal. Most of your players are not going to know what you're stealing from. And if they do, hell with them. Jason K says, I have the hardest time creating situations rather than scenes. This is something I feel very strongly about. Could you share a checklist of points that a situation should address to help me stay on track in your prep? Here's a quick checklist. This isn't perfect, but it's a quick checklist that you could think about how to build a situation instead of a scene. And I think about this often from also building a heist. A heist is just a situation, right? So you build the situation this way. A situation has a location. What is this location like? I like to give it multiple entrances, multiple paths, loopbacks, and secret paths. Those are known as Jaquays style dungeons, right? Dungeons where you have multiple ways in, you have multiple paths you can take, you have loopbacks, you have secret paths, secret passages, add all that stuff up. You want a location like that, go to DysonLogos.com or DysonLogos.blog, I think it is. Look up Dyson Logos maps, and all of his maps are built like this. But have a good location with options for the characters. You have inhabitants. Who's there? Is there a mix of unintelligent and intelligent monsters? It's something I really like to do. I like to have intelligent monsters are over here and unintelligent monsters are over here, and the players know it and they know which direction they're going to go, and they can kind of choose which way they want to go. Behaviors, those inhabitants, what are they doing when they're there when the characters aren't around? Do the guards walk around a certain area? Do they wall off the section with the unintelligent monsters so that they don't worry about them? Do the intelligent monsters wander away and sometimes come back? What is their behavior when the characters aren't there? Right? That helps. You need a goal. Why are the characters going to this place? Are they stealing something? Are they going to pick up a piece of treasure? Are they going to kill a big nasty boss? Are they going to rescue a prisoner? Why are they going to this location? And you want to make sure that's clear, and you're going to want to reinforce that a lot of times. Make sure it's very clear to the players why they're going to this location. And then you can have a complication. What's something that would occur? An external event. This can often be a strong start if you're starting your session in the middle of a place. What is an external event that can occur that can shake this place up? This in a heist, this is in particular, like the bad guy comes back into town, an earthquake occurs, something gets set on fire. What's some event that occurs while they're there that changes the dynamic? So even if they know we have intelligent monsters here, unintelligent monsters here, I've got a map, I know what my goal is, they have all this stuff, but something changes. Half of it collapses and they have to pick a different entrance. What's the complication? That complication one's kind of optional. You don't need it. Sometimes it could just be having monsters wander by that they didn't expect. But really, that's a situation. You have your location, inhabitants, behavior, a goal, and maybe some complications. Dr. Fugue says, it occurred to me when listening to the short video about prep you posted today that the lazy GM method sort of involves the use of quantum ogres. What do you think about their use? The term quantum ogre, I've only started hearing it recently. I heard it on a Reddit post. And the idea behind the quantum ogre is that whatever direction the players take, they're going to face an ogre. You have three different paths. They go out of their town. There's three different paths. There's the well-trod path. There's the rocky path through the woods. And there's the mountain path. And you're like, oh, which one do you choose? Like, I think we're going to go the mountain path. Like, you go down the mountain path, it comes out, an ogre is in front of you. And it turns out the ogre was in any one of the places. Whatever direction they go, the ogre is there. That's the idea of the quantum ogre. The ogre exists no matter what direction or path you take. Some people take that as like, that's really lazy, but it also works and works really well. You could change that ogre, right? You could say like, why is the ogre in the middle of the road in a well-trod road? Might be he attacked a caravan and took over a caravan. In the mountains, maybe he's just by himself. Maybe in the woods, he's fighting some other monster. You can change the circumstances because of the location and still use an ogre. Does that work for the lazy DM method? Absolutely. Some people use it as a pejorative. Some people use quantum ogre as a pejorative. You're just making things up. Yeah, it's D&D. That's what we do. We make things up. Certainly an area where there's like a quantum idea in the lazy DM style is in secrets and clues. Secrets and clues are specifically designed not to be tied to a specific circumstance in the game. Instead, the DM drops in those secrets and clues where they make sense given what's happening in the game. That's a really, really powerful difference between secrets and clues and other ways of sort of tying things. If you look at Wizards of the Coast books, they often say this NPC knows these 5 things. But that means if you don't see that NPC, you won't learn those 5 things. Secrets and clues says you'll learn them. You just might learn them some other way. We don't know how. Maybe an intelligent sword tells it to you. Maybe you dream it while you're taking a rest. Maybe it's you break down the rocky wall and find out there's a mosaic behind the wall that's teaching you something. There's all these different ways that you could learn it. That is a quantum idea. Boy, it works really well. So the idea of the quantum ogre being a pejorative or being a negative, I don't see it. I think it works fine. If it's not for you, it's not for you. I'm not going to argue with you. If you like it the way you're doing it, great. Go with the gods. I know this is the way that I like it. I know a lot of people that do it this way, and it can work really well. And it means you can prep a lot less stuff and run a more dynamic game. That's been my experience. Oliver W., where would you put Wild Beyond the Witchlight in your list of the video ranking WotC's D&D published campaigns? I did. I just finished Wild Beyond the Witchlight last week. I finally finished the campaign. I'm going to talk about it either on the next talk show or I'm going to do a separate video. But the specific answer to this question is I think it's probably the second or third best adventure. It's right by Curse of Strahd. It is really, really excellent. I really loved it. And I would put it definitely high at the list. It's hard to say, like Ghosts of Saltmarsh and this are pretty similar, but I would say it's better than Tomb of Annihilation, right? I liked it better than Tomb of Annihilation. I love Tomb of Annihilation. But I would say that it's probably second or third next to Ghost of Saltmarsh. Curse of Strahd is my favorite one of the hardbacks. I'm not talking about the starter set adventures, right? Of the hardback adventures, Curse of Strahd is still my favorite. And I still like Curse of Strahd a lot. I love that adventure a lot. And then this one and Ghost of Saltmarsh are right even with each other. You could argue either way, right? They're right even with each other. So I really like it a lot. Kevin B says, do you have any advice for wrapping up situations where PCs are done with an NPC? This is a good question. Done with an NPC prisoner. My group loves taking prisoners, and there's always seems to be this awkward moment after they learned what they learned. The only option seems to be murdering them or letting them go. I've tried a sudden rescue attempt by the prisoner's allies, but you can only do that so many times. I guess this is why so many spies in old movies have suicide pills. Any ideas on how to make this situation interesting? Yeah, it's a problem. And I would definitely lean towards mercy. Right? I would make it more palatable for the characters to give mercy than murder. So, and there's a couple ways you could do that. One is that you have them switch sides, right? You have them say like, look, this is a good moment of interaction. What I would not do, there's a big not do in this. I would not have them release the prisoner and it works against them. Only if you really made it clear that they should have wiped the guy out and there's a good reason to wipe him out. That isn't just murdering the dude. I would not have it come back and bite them. because is that more likely? Probably. But what that leads to is now you're just going to have them murdering every NPC that they ever talk to. And that leads to, evil characters. And maybe that's fine for your group. That's great. I don't want evil characters. I want them to be good people. And that means murder is not the right answer. So I often give them an approach. What does the NPC want? Besides living, what does the NPC want? But I often do like, oh no, they'll go become a farmer. And they actually will become a farmer, right? Or they will switch sides and like, hey, I can work with you. I can be paid off. Now, if you have like the evil cultist whose whole goal was to like raise this demon up and they capture him, then you can do like supernatural stuff. Like he just screams out and his body turns to ash, right? You can have like another entity kills them, right? Or the equivalent of the suicide pill. The gods just suck the life out of them or they kill themselves. You could have all these other options about why they remove themselves from it. That could be either external, maybe like an arrow comes out and hits them from the woods, right? Now, who's that? But then you have chase scenes and everything like that. But the main thing I would do is lean towards mercy, like lean towards mercy being the right option. We can be idealistic in our RPGs and we can say like, oh, it's far more realistic that this guy would go back to the bad guys and tell them. I did do that from time to time. There are certain monsters where you want to do that. There's certain monsters and certain enemies where you want them to, oh, no, I'll totally be on your side. I'll totally do what you want. And then later they're like, I totally got it. So I had like a kobold vampire that did that. Was it kobold vampire? They had like a kobold vampire that begged for mercy and they let it go. Oh, I'll be good. And then immediately went and told the bad guy and they're like, oh, that's it. You're done this time. Like that was a different circumstance. So I would not make that the norm. I would make that specific and for fun reasons. Matthew T says, I am running a one-shot game at my local game store and I've been asked to create pre-gen characters for potential new and or unprepared players. Level 3. How would you design characters to fit for a specific game that are flavorful yet simple? I would do two things. One is I would use the Sly Flourish. Go to shop.slyflourish.com. Go to either Ruins of the Grendelroot or Fantastic Adventures. We'll go to Ruins of the Grendelroot. In the Ruins of the Grendelroot page is a free player character pack right here. 70 pages. I just talked about this earlier in the show. 70-page character pack that has characters, all 12, I think, right? Every character class is here. And they are leveled. You can level them from 1st to 5th level right on the sheet. It has all the material you need. I would use this. I think they are the best pre-gen characters I've ever seen, because I did them. But I worked really hard I worked really hard, and other people, James Erner Castle worked on these. Eric Nowak worked on these. We had a bunch of people that spent a fair amount of time getting these in a right spot. I think they're excellent pre-gen characters. So first, I would use these. Second, what I would do is get out some 3x5 cards, get out some index cards, and write out like one plot point that ties to the adventure. Write out a number of these and hand them out during the game. Like when you're signing out, they could either pull one randomly or you could say, these are options. Which one of these do you want that tie their character to the campaign? And it could be one sentence. It could be, the main villain is my estranged uncle, right? Or I have an uncle so-and-so who I've lost touch with. Turns out they're the main villain, or the quest guy is a brother of mine, right? You can have just one, write one connection. And the interesting thing about writing those connections on like an index card is they're not tied to class or race or anything like that. Keep them abstract from what the rest of the character is like, so that any of the players can tie this hook to any of the characters that they decide to choose. It's a really modular approach. It's very easy to do. Just write out, like, look at your adventure, look at where it's going, look at the major NPCs, and say, here are all of these different potential ties that a character could have to one of these NPCs. And then either they could just pull one randomly, or you can put them all out on the table and let people pick which one makes sense for their character. I think that's a really good way to go. Friends, that is it for today's Lazy D&D Talk Show. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me today while we talked about all of this stuff. If you enjoyed this show, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, where you get a free adventure generator PDF plus a new Sly Flourish article sent to your inbox every week. You can support me directly on Patreon, where you get exclusive access to things like the City of Arches, the campaign source book, early previews of things that I'm working on, exclusive adventures that I've written, access to a Discord channel, and a whole lot more. You can pick up any of my books on the Sly Flourish Bookstore. The link is down in the show notes below, including physical copies of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, and the Lazy DM's Companion. And you can subscribe to my videos right here on YouTube. You can share this video or this podcast with your friends. You can share it on social media. You can let other people know about the work that I do. Thank you all very much. Have a great day. Get out there and play some D&D.